All right, we are all set. Yay. So once again, thank you for coming to another Friday conversation here at Silicon Slopes Lehigh headquarters. We're so excited to be back here doing these with you guys in the community and being able to interact directly, hear from you, learn from you, and highlight some really important, powerful, impressive movers and shakers. As we have already heard, our guest today is David Covey. You've had an incredible career already, and you have a lasting legacy that's already happening. But I think that the best way to begin is to go back a little bit. And I'm curious to know, when you've spent your career helping companies and individuals really sharpen and develop their business acumen. But is that what you originally wanted to do? Did you see yourself in this space? What was like a childhood dream?
Yeah, good question. So it kind of was, because I grew up with the 7 Habits. How many are familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Yeah. So my father wrote that, and the book came out in 1989, but for me, it was a philosophy growing up, right? So I had to be proactive at age 5, and I had to begin with the end in mind at age 6, and listen empathically at age 7. So it was great. So I grew up with, these concepts in my home. And my dad was a professor at BYU for 25 years. He loved that, but he was frustrated by the politics a little bit in academia. He didn't like the research side of it. Mm-hmm. He liked the teaching side of it, but he didn't like the research side of it. And he wanted to be able to take his content to a larger audience. Mm-hmm. So when I was 18 years old, just graduated from high school, he started Covey Leadership Center, mm-hmm. which ended up becoming Franklin Covey. So I kind of grew up with this kind of, training and content and stuff in my mind. So I wanted to, participate in that in some way. My dad said, if you want to work for my company, you got to get some outside experience first. Mm-hmm. So that was good advice. So I went and worked for Procter & Gamble, P&G, they consumer products company, and I sold paper products and soap products, food and beverage products, Phoenix, Arizona. I have some classic stories. One story is I was required to sell adult diapers, and the Procter & Gamble product was called Attens, Attends. Most people know Depends. That's made by the competitor, Kimberly-Clark. And I thought, how am I going to sell this product? This is like almost embarrassing. So I decided to put one on and see if the dry weave technology was as superior as Procter & Gamble told me. And it was. And I went to the stores, and I would go to the store manager and said, I'm not going to tell you about the superiority of the dry weave technology. It's better than Kimberly-Clark's, Depends. I'm just going to demonstrate its effectiveness, and you're going to agree to buy 25 cases. Do we have a deal? I'd hold out my hand. They'd look at me incredulously, and I had a cup of water, and I'd pour it down my pants, and I'd show that there was no leakage. And I sold more Attends in the history of Procter & Gamble. In fact, my boss got a call from the headquarters in Cincinnati and says, what's going on in Phoenix, Arizona with D. Covey? He sold more Attends in the history of the company. And so that was an amazing experience. I learned that you have to be creative and fun, to sell. And so I had a great experience with Procter & Gamble. I worked for American Express as well. And then I went to business school, and then I felt like I could be more valuable to the company at that point. But so it was kind of ingrained in me from the very beginning to kind of do something similar to what my father was doing.
Mm-hmm. It's just part of the at-home culture.
Yeah.
With that being said, what would be maybe something really surprising to people to learn about the Covey household? Was there any family dinner roundtable game or anything that would just be surprising to people to learn?
Yeah. So, even though we had the 7 habits, we didn't always like to be responsible, right? Your kids like being responsible all the time? I don't think so. So the secret in our family is that, my mom would always take your side, and she was, totally biased. So like when my brother and I egged our neighbor's car, and he came to the door and said, "I can tell from the trajectory that it came from your house." And my mom was like, "What? My boys would never do that,
Ride or die.
And of course, we had done it. We were guilty. But my mom just defended us, and she would be the kind of person that you could go to and talk to about frustrations with the school or coach or teacher. And you go to my dad, and it became totally objective. What did you do that caused the teacher to, never mind, Dad. I'm going to go talk to my mom. So no, we were a very normal family growing up, and we had our challenges and issues and problems just like any other family. But I love the metaphor my dad uses with living the 7 habits, because I would go on the road with him, and a lot of times people would say, "Do you live the 7 habits?" And his answer was, "I try. I'm not perfect. I'm always course correcting." And you think about an airplane. Anybody fly? A little bit? Yeah. The airplane has a flight plan, and their job is to stick to the flight plan. But 95% of the time, they're off course. And what do they keep doing? Course corrections, course corrections. Keep course correct to get back to the flight plan. And I think that's what a lot of our life is like, is as long as we're willing to kind of have like a kind of a vision or a goal of where we're headed, destination, and we keep course correcting, that's the important thing. Don't get down on yourself for making mistakes or, just not doing everything perfectly or right. It's going to happen. That's just what life is about. The important thing is to keep course correcting. And when you do that, just like an airplane, you eventually arrive at your destination.
And how often is it that in business and in life, the course correction takes you closer to the true destination, which might not have been your original goal? I've heard how countless business leaders say failure is the most valuable business experience, because you can refine and retool to get something that's truly valuable and sticky and lasting that maybe you didn't even set out to create.
I love that, and it's completely true. Yeah, it's life is about reinvention, especially nowadays, right? You have to reinvent yourself constantly, and you can't rest. There's no resting on your laurels. Maybe in the past, you could rest on your degree or rest on your past work experience, but now it becomes obsolete like within years, not decades anymore. And so the world is changing so fast that unless you're current, you become irrelevant really, really fast. So I love the idea of pivoting, changing, and you're right. All of the great ones, some of the great people that we revere as the great innovators, the great leaders, like Jeff Bezos, like Elon Musk. And you can have whatever opinion you have of these people. They're not necessarily the nicest people, but they are innovators, and they course correct. They experiment. They try things. They fail. In fact, at Amazon, Jeff Bezos said that we're the best place in the world to fail. And he said failure and experimentation are inseparable twins. Invention and failure are inseparable twins. To invent, you have to have failure, and you have to experiment. And so, yeah, that's the nature of life. And so it's there's no longer this course of, I'm going to do this, I've got this degree, and I'm going to stay in this job forever. Of course, there may be some examples of that, but I don't think that's the majority of the way that works now. Days.
Absolutely, especially in this just hyper-advancing technology era. I love what you said about reinvention. And speaking of reinvention, you co-authored this book, Trap Tales, which helps people identify and overcome the things that hold them back in business and in life. Actually, for those of you that are here today, we have a few copies of this book that we're going to be giving out later to, I think.
We're going to do a quiz, so whoever gets the answer is going to get the book. I got 3 books.
Will we get a signature from you on those?
They're already in there, baby.
Ah, sweet. See, he knows. So I'm curious, what inspired that book? And were you able to identify those traps in your own life?
Yeah. So what inspired me, anybody familiar with the model called force field analysis? It's by Kurt Lewin. So Kurt Lewin said, anytime you try to enact a change, you can think about it for our own lives. You have our current state, where we're at. We have driving forces or initiatives. And then we have restraining forces, and I like to call those the traps, that are holding us from getting there. And then we have our desired state. So current state, desired state, driving forces, and restraining forces. Most people and most businesses put so much emphasis on driving forces. These are the initiatives. These are the activities. These are the things that we're going to do. And they don't spend any time or nearly as much time focused on the restraining forces, the obstacles that are getting in the way. Let me use a practical example. How many set New Year's resolutions? Probably forgot about them. It's June, right? They probably, you forget about them in February. But let's say I had a New Year's resolution that I was going to lose 15 pounds, okay? This is what I was going to do. Anybody ever have one of those? Like, it may not be 15 pounds, okay? But I'm going to lose weight. So what would you do? Tell me what you're going to go out and do. What are some of the initiatives you're going to do You're going to work out, yep. You're going to run, you're going to have an exercise program, right? You may go join a gym. They'll make you sign a one-year contract because they know that in February they won't see you anymore, right? All these are good things. Now, for me, this is for me, I have 3 culprits that get in the way for me losing the weight. The first is late night binging. Okay, I get like a second life. David Covey 2.0, it starts at 6 p.m., right? And I do a lot of late night binging, not good, right? Second is I fall into the trap thinking that if I don't exercise first thing in the morning, I'll do it later. Anybody ever have that problem? Yeah. And then lastly, I like to go to the movies at least once a week. I'll even go by myself if I can't get anybody to go with me. And guess what I get? What's your comfort food? Popcorn. Do you think that coconut oil with that popcorn is terrible for you, right? It's like eating 5 Big Macs. So even though I may do all of the right things to try to lose weight, it can be undone, say, by these 3 culprits. And then I'd like to suggest that it's true in our own life, that we have many things that we do that are great, but we also have these traps, these this ability to self-sabotage ourselves, okay, that gets in the way. Anybody watch the Academy Awards with Will Smith and Chris Rock? Yeah. Remember what happened there? Okay, so I have in the 7 traps, of course I got to have 7, right, being a Covey. And so in the 7 traps, the 4th trap is the trigger trap. And in the trigger trap, it talks about how we all have triggers. We all have certain things that trigger us. Like a couple of mine are slow drivers. I go crazy, so I have to create a story. I have to breathe and then create a story about why they're so slow. That helps me. And someone taking credit for my work, that's another trigger. Okay, Will Smith obviously had a trigger about kind of protecting his wife, and here's Chris Rock making a joke about his wife with G.I. Jane 2. And in fact, he first laughed, and then he looked at his wife's reaction and saw that she was, angry by it. So on a global audience, okay, not just a national scale, he goes up and slaps Chris Rock across the face. Do you think he ever can overcome that particular image? Might not. I like Will Smith. I've watched a lot of his movies. But in that 30-second moment, totally will change the course of his life. His professionalism. Of course, he was banned from the Academy Awards for 10 years. And he was on the verge of winning an Academy Award for King Richard, which is a great movie. So my book, Trap Tales, focuses on those traps that get in the way, that prevent us from reaching our goal or achieving our vision. And it's also very much of an organizational thing. Organizations should focus on, hey, here are our initiatives, but what are the things that are going to derail us? Let's talk about some of the worst case scenarios, or what are some of the traps or the obstacles that can really prevent us from being successful. So I was obsessed with this idea of the restraining forces, which I'm calling the traps, that is a big part of life. And it's not about just doing your to-do list. It's also creating your not-to-do list. Here's some not-to-do lists that we need to manage. And I have ways to manage. Like I said, for slow drivers, I do two things. I breathe, and then I make up a story about why they're so slow. Oh, their mother must have just passed away. God, this is really sad. They failed the bar exam for the third time in a row. And then I feel good about why they're driving so slow. And I can manage that trigger of mine. You have to have a way to manage your triggers. You can't do it in the moment. Okay? Will Smith could not manage that trigger in the moment. You have to have a plan in advance on kind of how you're going to manage that. And if you guys want to open up this, I have card decks for you. So everything that I've said, whether you remember anything or not, if you've got the cards, you got everything. Okay? It's all right here. And if you go to this, you can see the 7 traps. There's a lot more than 7 traps, but these are what I found to be the 7 most common and modern traps. The busyness trap. Does that sound familiar with anybody? Mm-hmm. Drowning in the thick of thin things. The procrastination trap. Idling in the status quo. The ego trap. Maintaining a facade of perfection. We don't have that with social media or anything, right? Yeah. Everybody, the stuff that you see on social media is all true. None of these people have any problems.
It's
right?
never been edited.
Never, yeah. The trigger trap, allowing emotion to taint your perspective. The silo trap, operating as independent on a team. The settling trap, losing passion and inspiration in your professional work. And the myopia trap, failing to see the big picture. So those are traps that you may look at in your own life. This was easy for me to write the book because I had fallen in and had a problem with all 7 of those. So that's why it was so easy to write about it, because I had a lot of experience. And the character in the story, his name is Alex. It's a story. I'm telling a story. And Alex is me. And you read Alex, this is David, right? But those traps are really preventing us from being our best self. Don't self-sabotage your professional career. And all of us have a high propensity to pull off a Will Smith. Mm-hmm. We really do. And we can self-sabotage our own professional careers. Don't do that, and start by these 7 traps.
I want to just have us linger.
Sorry, a little longer than you wanted, but
no,
I wanted to
love
get
that.
into the cards.
I'm actually going to ask us to linger for one extra second on what you just highlighted with the trigger trap, because I think that that's so powerful. How often are our triggers overwhelming to us? And to your point, our nervous system reacts just as much as our
fight and flight. It's
exactly.
Normal, yeah.
And how powerful is it to not only take ownership of the fact that this trigger is mine, it's not this other person's, and when you can humanize it and empathize with it, that is so powerful. I want to make sure we double down on that right now for a second, because I think in 2025, we could have a very different interpersonal dynamic in reality if we could all practice that inside of ourselves. I'm going to be taking that one home for sure.
Thank you.
So you were mentioning all of these different traps, and one thing that I'm curious about is we see so many people, especially young business people, who will be pursuing a career that they think they align with and that they think is going to fulfill them and be the dream. And maybe they get so far as to get an offer letter for a role that is or isn't that culmination of that dream. How would you help young professionals avoid falling into a path of just taking something that looks good on paper, but might not actually be fulfilling? What are some pulse checks they can do to make sure it will be something that fulfills them?
Yeah, so we have so many options today, right? In terms of what we can choose to do with our life, what we can choose to do with our profession. So you should never settle, okay? And you need to work for a company, or you should work for a business, or you should have your own business where you have 4 needs that are met, okay? All of us have 4 needs. And if you look at the empowerment, the fact that there's massive disengagement currently, globally, not only in the United States, but all over the world. And there's disengagement. It's like massive disengagement. And they have 2 types, quiet quitting and loud quitting. Loud quitting is these guys are actively disengaged. You know, these are guys that hate you and they hate your company and you hate your leaders, right? And then quiet quitting is they kind of check their brain at the door, you know, they're just kind of going through the motions, right? And the reason why there's disengagement is because there's 4 needs that we all have that need to be met. We are whole people. I have a daughter that works for a great company, it's McKinsey Consulting, it's considered one of the top, if not the top strategy consulting company, but they work her to death. It's terrible. And it's also a fixed mindset culture. You know, the fixed mindset culture is either you got it or you don't, versus a growth mindset where there's beauty in the struggle, in the journey along the way. And it's a prestigious company. You know, I have friends that work for private equity companies, and great. You know, sometimes a lot of the finance worlds, but sometimes they may get, you know, they may pay really well, but they don't take into account some of the other factors. So the 4 factors are our pay. You know, do we feel like we're paid fairly? Second one is whether we feel like our mind is utilized. Do people ask for our ideas? Do they listen to our ideas? Do they care about what we think? Or do they want us to just fulfill something and not use our brains? Then we have a heart. The heart is the passion side of it, okay? You've got to have some passion in your job. It's not everything that you're going to do in your job you're going to feel passionate about. That's not realistic to think that everything that you do, you're going to be 100% passionate about it. But you better have 30% or 40% of your job that you're passionate about, or you're going to have some real problems. And then the last one is the spirit, or is this idea of the legacy, making a contribution, making a difference. Steve Jobs said, put a dent in the universe, right? The fact, if you got hit by a bus tomorrow and died, would it matter that you're not there anymore? Okay? You matter, and your contributions matter, and it's important. So those are the 4 areas, you know, our pay, our mind that's utilized, okay, and our heart that's engaged, and the spirit. So body, mind, heart, and spirit, those are the 4 areas in life. And if you find any time that there's disengagement or you're not fully engaged, I guarantee one of those 4 areas is lacking, okay? It's usually the pay. Why do most people leave companies? It's not because of pay. They fire their immediate supervisor. They fire their immediate boss because they don't have a good relationship, or they don't feel like the boss really cares about them, that they advocate their cause, that they just feel like a number, right? And so that's why a lot of people leave those organizations. So I'm highly passionate about everybody should work for a company and business that is broader than just making money or just paying you well, that they really, really want to utilize your mind. They want to unleash you, right? My father came from his father, and my grandfather started Little America. You guys know Little America? And Stephen Covey, he was the first Stephen Covey. And he built Little America, and he had Sinclair Oil and Gas, and he had cars, and he had apartments. And my grandfather continued in that. And then it came to my father, and my father said, I want to be a teacher. It's like, what? You want to be a teacher? And back then they said, those who do, and those who can't teach. That was the paradigm. And so he ended up wanting to be a teacher, and he ended up being a professor at BYU because that's where he felt, you know, where his contribution was. So you got to decide, you know, what you're really, really, you know, enjoy doing, what you're passionate about, and then work for businesses and companies that get it, that are really, really wanting to take care of you as a whole person, because you are a whole person, body, mind, heart, and spirit. That's you as a whole person. And anytime any of those needs are neglected or not met, you're going to feel some pain and some disengagement. Absolutely. And I think we can always sense if we're in a trap, even if we don't know what it is, right? Like you can just sense that unease inside of yourself. Yeah. My question is for, obviously everybody read the book.
there's so many insights to take away from it, but just for the purposes of today's conversation, if you can sense that you're in a trap and you don't yet know which of these 7 traps you might be in, would the quickest diagnostic tool you could use, the questions you could be asking yourself, would it be measuring it against those 4 needs? Or was there a different set of questions you can ask yourself to identify what's holding you back and what trap you're falling into?
Yeah, the 4 needs is specifically around trap number 6, which is the settling trap. And that's where we settle in our professional work, and we lose the passion and inspiration. So that's specifically, the 4 needs is specifically around that. The other traps can be a whole, they could be at work, they could be at home, or in your individual life, so that they're different. And all of them, I promise you, can resonate. Think about busyness, how crazy our world is, right? And how easily you can be interrupted, and how much you have to do, how many emails you have to read. It's crazy, right? It's really, really hard. Procrastination. Anybody have anything that you've put off or postponed changing? We all have, right? So there's ego. Ego is where we try to maintain this facade of who we are, as opposed to being someone who wants to be seen as, hey, that guy fails a lot. And they pick themselves up, and they're, and they're experimenting, and they're willing to try different things. So we want to try to avoid this perfection facade that we have. So I think what you would do is you would look at your life and say, man, why am I not achieving this goal or reaching this vision? And see where you're getting derailed, seeing where you're getting off track. And I'm suggesting that a lot of times it's our own self that is doing that. It's the self-sabotage. So, but most of it has to come from the fact that you're dissatisfied with your result, or you're dissatisfied with where, you're feeling stuck. You're feeling stifled. You're not breaking through. Those are the indicators to say, okay, I'm definitely in a trap.
And I love that you just pointed that out, because I think I can say from personal experience, if we're not able to be brutally honest with ourselves about ourselves, if we're not able to look at our blind spots and see where we are absolutely consistently our own trap, then we're doomed to repeat these cycles where we fall into that victim mindset, everybody else is against us, and there's no solutions there. There's just a place to sit, right? So I love that you highlighted that as well. The more brutally honest we could be with ourselves, even in private, about ourselves, I think that there's freedom in that.
Yeah.
Moving forward a little bit with Acumen Learning, you have developed a specific training curriculum for them, all these protocols, and you guys are training some of the biggest companies in the world to increase business acumen and create and increase knowledge. What do you find is the most glaring gap in people's understanding of business? And what is maybe one of the biggest misconceptions about business that you're finding?
Yeah. So business acumen, open up these cards. These are the Building Business Acumen Essentials. And these cards have all of the key stuff as well. So on the back of the first card, we actually give a definition of business acumen. So
Let's hear it, please.
we define, and there could be other definitions, but this is kind of how we define it and what we do in our course. Business acumen is understanding how your company makes money and making good decisions around the money-making process. So I think it's important to understand, okay, how does our business make money? And then how can I contribute? What kind of good decisions can I make that can contribute to that? And what we found is that, Jess, there's a big gap in terms of companies and employees and even leaders, a lot of leaders, that simply don't have business acumen training. And what happens is that they have functional excellence, and so they get promoted in their function, whether it be sales or HR or operations or whatever, but they never got these basic fundamental business financial principles. And maybe they didn't have it in their schooling, and they never got it, and then they're at a VP level, and then it's kind of like almost too late to kind of raise their hand and say, excuse me, I never got any business acumen training. And so we have, as a company, provided this for 23 years. My friend Kevin Cope started the company in 2002. He's been doing this for 23 years. They've never got distracted in trying to get into other kind of trainings. They've just focused on business acumen. And it's awesome because they have tons of business. We have tons of clients, great clients, and because there's just such a huge gap still within organizations. So I'm going to teach you the 5 business drivers. This is on card number 2. Okay? And every business, these are the 5 most important business drivers in the business. Cash, profit, assets, growth, and people. And when we say people, we're talking about internally employees as well as customers. So there's a way to remember this. Okay, you ready? We'll do a little kinesthetic exercise. Okay, what's the universal sign for cash? Here you go. You guys got it. Okay. Profit is about increasing your revenues and also decreasing your expenses. So this is profit. So cash, profit. Assets, you want to be, it's the fist bump, okay? Show us your bicep there. You want to be able to be strong in terms of our assets, asset strength, but we also want to utilize our assets effectively, right? So for instance, when Microsoft had $100 billion in cash, that's great. That's strong in cash. But if it's sitting in the bank, is it being utilized very effectively? No. So if they go and purchase LinkedIn for $26 billion, which they did, that's a better utilization of that asset, of that cash asset. So assets is the fist bump. Growth, where do you want your growth to be? Up? What's that? That's flat. That's down. So growth is up. And then people, to close to your heart. Okay, ready? Cash, profit, assets, growth, and people. And those are really the 5 business drivers, and we've been teaching this model. Models are awesome because they give people a framework. You don't have a model, and you don't have a framework, it's hard to understand things. And models help us, get a grip on it and help us remember it. And so we've been teaching this for 23 years. What my role is I have been hired 2 years ago to set up a train the trainer offering certification. So that means clients can get certified to teach this. And we designed it in a way to where HR professionals who are awesome at teaching can deliver this content. Even though they're not a subject matter expert in the finances, we have the heavy lifting being done by Kevin Cope in the videos, and we have a train the trainer offering. And it's been awesome. We introduced it, created a year to create the program, and we now have 10 clients and got another 5 to 10 on the way. Would love if any of your businesses would be interested in getting certified in this. I would love to certify you in this. It's relatively inexpensive, and you can offer this training to your people within your company as well. So anyway, those are the 5 drivers, and that's kind of my work that I've been doing with Acumen Learning.
Yes, and I think for those that might be listening or watching from home, it's important to note that this diagram, it has cash, profit, assets, and growth as these kind of equal 4 pillars or 4 bases, but the people are at the center. And I think that's often lost in business, is that the people are going to be the X factor of your success or your losses, right? Even if all these other 4 are going, you still need to have a heart at the center of people driving it forward.
Jess, it's almost like Kevin was whispering in your ear. Oh. So David, you forgot to mention that the people driver is the most important driver. It's the reason why it's in the middle. It's the 5th, not because it's the least important, it's the 5th, and it's in the middle because it's the most important. But yeah, people drive everything. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there's a quote on people which I love. Engage employees anticipating customer needs drives cash, profit, assets, and growth. So it's people that are the key difference to do that. And again, we're talking about internal people, employees, as well as your customers.
Nice, thank you. So one of the things, you've had this career that has spanned industries, right? Tech, pharma, finance. You've seen every type of leader, every type of personality.
I haven't been in pharma. Our company's done a lot of training with pharma.
apologize. That's
Yeah.
what I meant.
Yeah. Okay.
But you've seen these,
I've seen a lot of different industries, yeah.
what are the kind of patterns that you've seen emerge amongst the most successful, most effective executives?
Good. I got this question. By the way, your questions were awesome. I don't know if you put them together or Sarah or whoever, but these are awesome questions. So yes, I have five traits that I think that the most successful executives have consistently that I've observed over my career. First is focus. Being focused is so important. You know, focused on what you're doing in your business, sticking to your knitting. I think a lot of times companies get in trouble when they start to branch out into areas where they're not really very good at, right? And they become, they start to wander a little bit. So staying focused is important. Inspiration. You got to be inspiring, okay? Remember John F. Kennedy, what did he say? We're going to put a man on the moon before the end of the century and bring him home safely. What did Eisenhower say before that? We want to be the world's leader in space exploration. Which one's more inspiring and compelling and specific? World leader in space exploration didn't get us anywhere. It was too nebulous, it was too vague, it was too broad. We're going to put a man on the moon before the end of the century and bring him home safely? Okay, that was very specific. It's a vision actually with a deadline. And on July 20th, 1969, it was actually achieved 6 months before the end of that decade. So inspirational is important. Visionary, I touched on that. So focus, inspirational, visionary. Trustworthy. I think it's important as a leader for you to be trustworthy. You cannot engender trust unless you're trustworthy yourself as a leader. And that's the character side of it. That's where my father spent a lot of his work, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That subtitle of the 7 Habits book was Restoring the Character Ethic, right? It's not about personality. I mean, it's okay to have a personality, but do you have this strong foundational character that people can trust? That's very important as a leader. And then lastly is empathic. And this idea of great leaders are great listeners. A lot of leaders are terrible listeners. They don't know how to listen. They don't care about what other people think. They stop asking questions, a lot of them. And so you have to be empathic. You have to really listen to other people and care what they think and have them contribute to the business. This idea is about getting all the minds involved around a problem and getting all the hearts connected around that. And you do that when you show empathy, when you listen to people.
Absolutely. With that being said, realizing that we are in kind of a changing of the guard generationally with leaders, right? And we're seeing such different personality types and such specific nuanced challenges from each generation moving forward. When you look at the future of leadership and learning, what do you think aspiring young professionals are not being taught? What do they need to become obsessed with in order to really succeed in the new paradigm of business moving forward?
Yeah, great question. I would say they need to be obsessed with finding their unique talent. There's been a lot of books that talk about passion and talent. I kind of more lean towards the go where your talents are, not necessarily where your passions are. And so I think that, so if you go where you've got to try to find your niche in terms of where you're unique, where's your unique contribution, where you can make. And everybody has their uniqueness. Everybody has their things that make them who they are. And a lot of times people they're followers. They just kind of go with the flow. They haven't really thought about their life. They haven't really done any inventory on who they are, who their strengths are, what their strengths are. And so they just find themselves floating into a career. They kind of get into this job. They didn't mean to get in that job, but then they got married and they started having kids. Now they have to stay in the job. I have a brother-in-law that was an engineer, and he wanted to make things, build things. But he had a friend that said, hey, I have a tuxedo business. This was back when tuxedos were still kind of the in thing. can you help me out? I said, okay, yeah, I'll help you out for like 6 months. 25 years later, you're still in the tuxedo business. And I said, why did you stay there? He says, I was stuck. I was just totally trapped. I couldn't get out, you know, and I needed the money, and it was, you know, too far removed. And eventually, after 25 years, he left, and he started building airplanes. And he loves it. But he's only been doing that for the last 10 years. But the first 25 years, he got derailed. So I think that I would ask young people, young professionals, really think about what your unique contributions are and what what real differences that you can make, and focus in on that and those kind of jobs. Don't worry about your weaknesses. In fact, a lot of times when you spend time with your weaknesses, guess what? You go from like here to here. It's just this small little minuscule improvement. But if you focus on your strengths, you could be 10x or even 100x better than someone else because your strengths are so unique and different. This is Marcus Buckingham, First Break All the Rules, 1999 book. He said, most managers and leaders make the huge mistake of trying to focus on their low performers. And the low performers only have a small level of improvement that they can do. He says, you should focus on your superstars. And he says, it's counterintuitive, I know, because they're already superstars. But you don't realize that those superstars can actually produce 10x, 50x, 100x more than what they're currently doing. So it is counterintuitive. So don't worry about your weaknesses. Everybody has them. Focus on your strengths and focus on your talents and your uniqueness and your capabilities. Find your niche. Don't follow the crowd. Don't settle. Don't wander. Be very thoughtful. I mean, your career is a third of your life, maybe even a half of your life, you know, in the early years. So really, really focus on what is unique, you know, where you can make some unique contributions, where you can make a difference. And don't settle.
I love that. I want to be mindful of time because we do have a bunch of books to give out to participants that have burning questions and can answer a quiz of ours. How are we doing on time, guys? Good? Okay.
5 minutes?
Oh, 5 minutes left? All right, let's just start the Q&A then, I would say, because I want to make sure we get a chance. Do we
give out the books after the Q&A?
Yeah, well, should we do the quiz first? I want to make sure we get these books. Do you?
Yeah, okay, I'm ready.
All right.
You guys ready? Okay, Jess is going to be the judge as to whose hand goes up first.
Okay.
So try to keep your hands, try to keep your eyes, Jess, on the whole group. Okay. We're going to first give out, let's give out the Business Acumen book, Seeing the Big Picture. And it's open book, open cards, right? You got your cards. Someone tell me what the 5 drivers are.
Oh, we'll give you the mic.
Pardon me.
Even do the
Okay.
kinesthetic.
Yes, we got to do. I'm a kinesthetic learner. All right. So we got cash. We have profit. We have assets. That's my strength is my asset. And then we go growth. And then our final is, the people.
Yeah.
The people. Yeah, people.
Nice.
Nice.
you.
Yay.
Good job. Okay.
Thank you for being fearless. We love it.
Okay. Second question. What, according to Acumen Learning, is the definition of business acumen?
Business acumen is how a company makes money and how people can make better decisions to keep making more money.
Nice. Good job. And again,
Thank
that's on card number 1. Right on the back of that. That's the definition of business acumen. Okay. And of the 5 drivers, Jess helped point out the most important driver. Which one is it?
Right here. And go ahead and tell us your name first when you get the mic, just so we can get to know you a little bit better.
It's Andy, and the most important, of course, are people.
Yeah. Awesome.
Nice.
Why?
I forget that part.
They drive everything, right?
They drive
Yeah.
They're the heartbeat.
They're
They're
hard.
the heartbeat. Yep. Okay. Nice job. Okay. Now let's go to the trap tails. First question. How many traps do I have on my trap?
Ooh, I think it was right here.
Yeah,
Plaid
I think
shirt.
so.
I'm Jared, and there are 7.
That's right.
Because you are a Covey, and you have to have
right.
7.
Could you
He was paying
imagine
close attention.
the 5 habits of highly effective people? Not one person would buy it.
No,
But if there's 7,
there's 7.
yeah, they're going to buy it. Okay, nice. Okay, I spoke during the Jess questions. I talked about the career trap, okay? And it's also known as what trap? It's trap number 6.
Nathan Carver, settling.
That's right. It's the settling trap. Yep. And the definition again of that was losing passion and inspiration in your professional work. And there was, to the settling trap, this is the last question, there are 4 things that we should focus on, or 4 dimensions. Yes, sir.
Ben Schmuel. This was the spirit, body, or spirit, mind.
Body
Spirit, body, mind,
and
heart.
heart. Nice. Yeah.
Do I get half the book for that
No,
one?
you got it.
He splits it. Solomon.
Yeah. It's the whole person, body, mind, heart, and spirit, right? And those 4 things help us make sure that we don't fall into that settling trap. Okay.
Very nicely done. Thank you, guys. I also want to give some room in case you have specific questions. Does anybody have a question for David? Yes. Can we have the mic right there, please? Thank you. Will you tell us your name and then
Yes.
go ahead and ask your question?
Cynthia Gamble. How
Oh,
are you?
hey,
Jessica?
Cynthia. I was in the same area as Cynthia. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
How's
too.
Tyler?
Doing great.
That's good.
And the boys are doing great. So I listened to and I was very interested to come because of your new adventure or venture,
Sure.
that you have. And you mentioned a lot of personal growth, individual growth, all conducive to a successful professional, personal life. But it kind of stopped me in my tracks a little bit when you have this say on one of the cards, the graph, and it says, people work hard for a paycheck, harder for the person, and hardest for a purpose.
Yes.
I did not hear during your presentation, if I understand these 3 levels of work, any inclination to some sort of altruistic or philanthropic work that probably should be part of that growth that you're referring to as
it relates to business acumen, you mean?
as it relates to business acumen.
Yeah. So again,
The thing is, because I was very touched by this particular say, where the hardest worker is the one that has a purpose bigger than ourselves, our own selves.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of you talk a lot of personal growth, so we can be,
right.
all this stuff that we can be. But
Yeah.
there's also a lot of growth in trying to find a purpose bigger than our own self in the community, in the world, and things like that.
Yeah,
nature.
totally. So in our Acumen Learning training, we help with 2 gaps. The first gap is the lack of business acumen that currently exists. So we give a definition, we give a model, the 5 drivers model, and we do a lot of great training around that. Okay. The second gap is the gap of disengagement and misalignment. Okay. And here's the reality is, because a lot of the people don't understand the financials, they don't understand the financial metrics of the company. They don't connect with the strategy of the company. They don't know what they do on a day-to-day basis. How does that connect with the mission and the vision and the strategy of the company? And so we believe that by focusing on the numbers and giving people this basic education, teaching them these basic principles, that they will then also be more aligned, better aligned, to the organization, and they also will have greater engagement than what they have. Because if I know what I'm doing day to day and how that connects back to helping the company, that helps me become more engaged. So we as a company, we do a lot of outreach to many other. We do a lot of charity work, and we give money away and time away. As a company, we do that. Acumen Learning does that because we care about that, and Kevin's always cared about that. In our business, because we're talking with companies, we do provide this financial business acumen training, which is so necessary and needed. But at the same time, we're also helping employees and leaders be more aligned and engaged than they are, because we believe that by learning these basic principles, that happens naturally. It's almost like a byproduct of what happens with that. So we're very committed to that quote. It's true, and it is true. We'll work hard for a paycheck. If we have somebody that cares about us, we'll even work harder for that person. You've probably had some leaders like that. Would go through a wall for that leader or for that person, right? And then if you have this broader purpose, like the John F. Kennedy example that I use, which was this was a broad national goal and vision, about putting a man on the moon. So that can happen as well, and some companies are good at that, at helping their employees and leaders understand that purpose, and other companies are not as good at that. But we believe that if people understand the basic financials, they'll be able to reconnect better with the mission, vision, values, and strategy of the company. I don't know if that answered your question, Cynthia, but.
Yes, it does. I just wanted to make sure, I don't know if I wanted to make sure, I just wanted to know if that is part of your curriculum.
Oh, huge part. Huge part. They have something in our industry, it's called NPS. Have you heard of NPS? Mm-hmm. Net Promoter Score. Yeah. And we get consistently 80, 80s, 90s in our Net Promoter Score, which is off the charts. It's exceptional. And we pride ourselves in providing a wonderful experience. And a lot of times people are like, what? I'm going to get financial business acumen and you're going to make it fun and interesting and engaging? We go, yeah, we are. You can learn these principles, these foundational left brain, type of principles, but we're going to do that in a fun and engaging way. So our company is very much committed to that.
Thank you.
Great shoes, by the way, Cynthia.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I love it.
I'm a shoe person.
So am I. How many more questions do we have time for, do you guys think? One or two more. Do we have one or two more questions in the room? Right up here.
Mine'll be quick. It's really a curiosity question. Are you the clean and green kid?
That was my brother, Stephen.
Oh, okay. So that's why Stephen is always talking about it.
He was
And maybe
he was 6 years old.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, the Green and Clean story is about my father in the Seven Habits book teaching about stewardship delegation. And my older brother was given the stewardship of taking care of the lawn. And so my father would point to our neighbor's lawn and say, we want our lawn looking like our neighbor's lawn. What kind of color do you see? Green. Yeah. Do you see a bunch of garbage on it? No, it's clean. Green and clean, green and clean. And for a month, my dad was training my brother to take care of the lawn. And then once he took over, he totally didn't do anything. And he went back and cried to my dad and said, this is so hard. He said, what's so hard about it? You haven't done anything. But what was hard was this stewardship, taking ownership and having this ownership for this. And then eventually he learned how to do that. But it was pretty young, kind of pretty harsh to do that to a 6-year-old.
Got to learn early, some grit, some ingenuity.
Okay, Andy again. So I do have a question, but I just wanted to comment. I think I saw you speak a long, long time ago at the Tokyo American Club in American Chamber.
Oh my
of Commerce.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk
Amazing.
about that later.
Yeah.
I remember that from a long, long time ago. Anyway, my question is, I think based on the reality of today's world, I just wanted to ask about use of technology and specifically, AI, and how do you think that's going to change the whole paradigm with people and the drivers of business? Or anything you can comment on that?
Great question.
I love that. I hope all of you are book readers. Really, if you want to lead, you got to read, right? And I try to listen to one book a week on Audible and read 2 books. So I try to do 3 books a week. I achieve that most of the time, 2 or 3 books a week. But one book I love that's on AI. You guys ever read the book Sapiens? Yeah. So same author, Harari, Noah Harari, I forgot his first name, but he wrote a book called Nexus, Nexus. It's the best book I've ever written about AI and about the impact that AI is going to have. I think that it's going to change everything. I just had an example with one of my clients that's in the real estate business, and they said to me, David, this is great, but these are too generic. I need something more specific for our industry. And so I asked ChatGPT, please provide me cash, profit, assets, growth, and people. What would be the levers if I was in a real estate mortgage business? And they came out and gave me this wonderful list that I then presented to my client, and my client was like, did you get our numbers? We're a privately held company. How do you know so much about my company? I was like, I don't know anything about your company, but ChatGPT does, and AI does. So I think it's amazing, and I think it should be part of very much, we need to embrace it. Mm-hmm. You know, we can't be like an ostrich and put our head in the sand. A lot of times people will say that AI won't take your job, but a person using AI will. And then I heard an example of this, that an automobile won't take your job, but a horse driving an automobile will. Which is like saying, yeah, AI is going to take your job. So you got to figure out a way to use it and embrace it, and because it's just going to be very much part of our world. And this book, I think, by Harari, helps give us the idea about how we can best engage with it. But he gave one key insight is the self-correcting mechanisms is what does not exist in AI. And that's kind of the cautionary tale, is that we have all of this information, but there's no self-correcting mechanisms in place to correct some of the challenges and problems that AI will create. Anyway, I really very much believe that we should embrace it and have it be part of who we are. And I would suggest by reading that book.
Allow it to supercharge us, right? Yeah. And also allow it to kind of fill the gaps of those weaknesses that you said, right? There's so many tools out there that you can, and it needs that human oversight, to your point. There's so many ways it could go wrong. So just I'll add it to the arsenal. Become limitless, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we thank David for this amazing conversation, for spending your time with us?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then for all of you here, as you guys know, Silicon Slopes, we are grounded in the mission of Learn, Connect, Serve. This was the learning portion. We want to make sure before you leave here today that you're able to connect with each other and figure out some ways in which you can start serving either each other, your community, your industry, whatever it might look like. We firmly believe that when a community comes together with collaboration over competition, really good things happen. So thank you again. Make sure to say hi to some people, and we'll see you again next week.